Well, folks, how you all doing? Great to have you all here in one room, as under the name of the Lough Keepers, the Carlingford Lough Keepers. Probably the reason we're here is there's many concerns, many issues around Carlingford Lough. We'll not go into them. We know them all, environmental and things that's having an impact on nature and wildlife and the well-being of human life here. We know what's been happening in places like Lough Neagh and Lough. So this gives us a big, it's an eye-opener to see what's going on there. But we have major concerns here in Carlingford Lough that nobody's keeping an eye on. There is people keeping an eye on it, but as individuals and here and there. And it's our aim and ambition here tonight to put the Carlingford Lough community together and to unite us through the waterways of Carlingford Lough and unite us as one community and one voice, the Carlingford Lough community. It's great to see some of the people in the room here, new faces and old, the vast amount of knowledge and wisdom in this room here alone. So we're just about to put it all together and connect with one voice. Many times around Carlingford Lough they would have said the water divides us, but on this occasion it connects us. So yeah, I'm going to put you over to Bernard here, just to say a few words. And I want to say thanks to everyone for coming along. Thanks to the folks in Ballybot House as well for providing the great venue. And hope you have a nice evening. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Bernard Kilgallen and I live on the shores west of the lough on the Meath side. So I have lived there from 10 years old on and off, and always had a keen interest in looking after the lough and making sure the lough was protected. Look across at Warren Point and be envious of their swimming groups they have there and think that we should have the same. But with the water quality the way it is and so close, so much further up the lough, we've always been advised against it. So I've been a long lough user through sailing clubs and been voluntary rescue drivers here with Tommy on the lough. So we've always had a keen interest in just preserving the lough. And again, this group, we met up just to have one voice, one strong and loud voice for the lough and make sure that we're all saying the same thing and any issues that the lough has are addressed through the one voice from us all. I'm going to pass you over to Vanilla. Say a few words. Thank you.
Again. Okay. Great to be here. Great to see so many people here. Good to see so many faces I recognise. I grew up in Warren Point. I'm the third generation of my family to grow up there. I've always been very aware of the waterways. Learnt to swim at Sandy Bottom. And then in the 60s, my family took over running the swimming pool. Don't know if anybody remembers that. But our whole life, those summers revolved around the tides and being aware of what the water was like and being aware of making sure it was clean and how you do that. Then I left home at 17 and came back when I was 35 and was shocked to find that the town dock was under threat and they were going to fill it. There was plans to fill it in. So my father and I joined the Save Our Seafront campaign. And by people power, we managed to reverse that and save the town dock. So that shows you the power of people coming together and working together for one aim. So I hope that this group aims to keep the lough safe, to keep it clean, unpolluted, make it safe for swimmers and people who fish, safe to eat. My brother reminded me that in the 60s there was a period when you couldn't eat the mussels and because of some toxins in the water. So we don't want that to happen again. So it's very important to come together and protect the lough. I want to be part of it and I hope everybody here does as well and joins us in this adventure. Thank you. I'll hand you to Ronan.
Good evening, everybody. Roland Fitzsimons is my name. I'm from Newry originally. My father's family have been in the Warrenpoint area, for 300 years at least, anyway. I used to go swimming in the swimming baths in the 60s, and fond memories of it. And I try and swim most of the year round in the sea, and I'm working as a solicitor in Belfast, and I live there with my son and his mother half the week, and I'm in Warrenpoint the other half of the week. But I only became fully aware of this terrible problem that we have during the summer, and fortuitously during the Rostrevor Festival I was sitting in front of Fionnuala, I think, and I heard her talking to a friend of mine, and I had been aware of the problem for a couple of months before, and felt that I should do something, try and get involved in some way. And anyway, that was the moment. There have been times in the past few months that I've actually felt nauseous. Initially, it was the ghastly smell of the organic waste wafting out from the port to all over Warrenpoint, and particularly to those people who live on the Newry Road and up the Bridle Lonan a bit. And more recently then, since they've been spraying this disinfectant or bleach, God knows what it is, we need to get to the bottom of it. The smell is intermingled with bleachy, medicinal type smell and the awful black bin waste. But apart from that pollution of our atmosphere, there is leaching into the loch, and the horrible slimy substance on the surface of the water has reached as far around as the sandy bottom and other parts of the loch. Apart from those types of pollution, there's also the noise and light pollution, which particularly affects the residents or neighbours in Omeath at night time, disturbing their sleep. I've heard stories of mothers not allowing their children out into the back garden because of the awful smells during the summer, and people not being able to eat outside because of the sick feelings they have. I don't think there's been very much activity from our elected representatives, and there have been questions asked and not answered. I think there's been financial inducements given to various organisations and businesses, sporting bodies, to buy our silence, or the silence of people in the community who might otherwise be motivated to talk or to be active. I'm a great believer in the power of the law to right wrongs and to bring justice where there is injustice. And we've consulted some environmental lawyers, and I think that, a case in public nuisance needs to be brought, or a case in judicial review of the public bodies which are involved needs to be urgently started, to which end we would have to fund an independent, totally independent forensic scientist, environmental scientist report on all aspects of the pollution that we're suffering from, the contamination. And I think we should be doing this yesterday rather than today. So we will need to establish at some stage some kind of crowdfunding. We did try initially to get somebody who could act as an initial plaintiff with legal aid, but that proved so far to be unsuccessful. So we'll have to address those problems and questions, in the next few weeks. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Paul. And I think specifically that would be someone on income support. should it happen that we go towards the courts, but that hasn't been decided at all, because we're here not just to talk about the problems, but to find a way to solve them. I think that's really important to take that on, because we all know the problems. But for anyone who doesn't, I just do a little quick run through with some slides just to bring you up to date in case you're hearing about this for the first time. I'm aware that we're in Ballybot House, Ballybocht. It's a place where people came in absolute desperation in the past, if I'm not mistaken. And we're not in the best of shape coming here at the moment, to be honest. One of the most basic things in life is water. We don't last very long without it. You probably know the story about Lough, which is in big trouble because there's far too many nitrates going into the soil. And there's all kinds of unknown stuff going into Carlingford Lough. It doesn't really matter where the water is, it affects us all. The water, the fish in there don't know there's a border. It's really important to have a cross-border operation to bring all the parties who are supposed to be looking after this to account, or encouraging them or coaxing them in whatever way we might. I'm very aware that we're in Newry as well, which is very much connected to Carlingford Lough. The Clanroy flows through here. All the water collected in the countryside around us comes through Newry. Sometimes there's far too much of it, as you know, and that's another thing needs to be addressed. I think in the interest of balance, it's really important that we have people here from bodies like in Northern Ireland Water. They have been invited tonight, but I believe, Bernard, they're not able to make it. And would I be right in saying that we've invited Warrenpoint Harbour Authority and Regen West?
No, we didn't invite any of the port customers. We just invited the port as we'll let them know about it as a whole.
And there is a representative here from the harbour.
Oh, very good. Someone from the harbour. Thank you very much for coming along. And please feel free to speak as freely as anyone here will, because I'd really like to think, and we would really like to think, that this is about really giving a voice to you. This microphone will be roving around the room very shortly. I just thought in saluting the people who used to come here to sell seaweed and the like in Newry Market, another sign of the cross-border thing. I was talking today to Pádraig Niolachain, who has done some amazing work in collecting songs from this area, Oriel. And she has a song, it's actually called, is it Margot Anur? Would that be the right one? Newry Market, I would mean. And I just thought, take a minute to think of all the people who came here in the past, all the people who are connected through the river. I lived briefly here in Quay Street. There was a street nearby called Boat Street. There was a river street. There was a stream street. There's a water street. There's a bridge street. So this town, as our city, as well as Warrenpoint, or indeed any of the many towns and communities right around the shores of the lough, very much connected. Let's see, can Pádraig do us this song?
One and two, one, two, one, two, one and two, one, two, waggity, one and two, one, two, one. The hind play rock at the rock, me one and two, one, two, one. I go about Collins, the spine is Yanager Cross in Bikini, Yanager Crew, Gastarn, is Puppet your board at a guinea. One and two, one, two, one. One and two, one, two, waggity, one and two, one, two, one. The hind play rock at the rock, me one and two, one, two, one. Hoi me gemaakt when Joris aan de bikuru wai kalini die banner ich has a hoi gespoken die trusje padeli.
One and two, one, two, one, one, two, one, two, waggity.
One and two, one, two, one. The heine flare of the rogue me one and two, one, two, one.
Thanks very much, Pádraig, for sending that to us today. Great to have you here in spirit. Have a look at the map, 1602. Round about there, a man called Richard Bartlett drew this one up. He would have been working with ink, probably oak ink. He used red berries for doing the colourings. Do you see Kilbrony Church up there? Just put a bit of red into that one. That's Restrever Oakwood here. But what really fascinated me about this was that he's drawn little tracks in the water. It's little pathways of the boats, just to remind us that the water was the road that connected us all. access to that water is so important. Maybe not as accessible today as it was in the days when you maybe went across to Omeath and boats and so on. Very tightly controlled by an authority which has every right to have that authority, but it's how they use it, I think, that's really, really important and needs to be scrutinised with honesty. So Richard Bartlett's interesting because he, about a year later, he was beheaded in Donegal. This would have been one of the last maps he did. Map making is a very dangerous business. It certainly was in the time of Queen Elizabeth, who would have been paying him, because sometimes map makers and consultants will draw whatever you want them to draw, or they will write whatever you want them to write. There could be a smell, a really bad smell that makes people sick in the streets, that makes people run back into their house. And there are consultants who would put the emphasis on the first 3 letters of that word. There are consultants who would write a document saying there is no smell. Think about that. That's something definitely we need to find a way to challenge. This place has attracted people for so long, but just to give us a sense of time, this is 4,000 years before the man who will celebrate on Christmas Day walked on the earth. These are old flint tools worked by man, cutting, working with fish. There's even a little groove there for doing special cutting. Found at Norwater by Shay here, just to give you a sense of that time. The Celts, modern history, compared to this. This is Neolithic people that made these and were attracted to this area for all kinds of reasons. The same reasons that bring ports, harbours, commerce, people just looking to live and enjoy the area, the beauty. I thought it was worth just taking a look at that to remind us of how far this all goes back. People, of course, have been saluting the beauty of the place, coming with paintbrushes over the centuries, I suppose. And what's also interesting about this little or beautiful painting is that there's a ferry boat on the Newry side of Norwater Castle. The 2 slipways for that ferry are still there. You can go and see them to this very day, and they're in very, very good condition as well. And as Shay has been telling me, and Bill Riley, a man who's done a lot of study into the area, the Mound Road, which comes down to that ferry, is the old road from Downpatrick to Tara. And if you look at old maps, you'll see that the Mound Road is called the Downpatrick Road. So I thought that was worth mentioning as well. Warren Point, all sorts of ways to attract visitors over the years. Who is this man? Is it Cuchulainn, maybe? I'm not too sure. It could be the Cooley Peninsula in the background is centre stage of Irish mythology. Red McElroy, okay. It could also be Murtagh of the Leather Cloak. Do you know about Murtagh of the Leather Cloak? He was a man who marched from Donegal in the winter with an army to sort out some problems here. There were some people, I think, who weren't too popular at the time. I have no idea who they were. But they felt safe in the winter time because armies didn't march in the winter. But he kitted the army out in leather cloaks and he marched here. And it seems they managed to persuade them to move on to another place. Murtagh of the Leather Cloak. But the thing about it, there is an air, even though it's a tourist poster, I think it's the Great Northern Railway did that one, there is an air of defence and a defender. And some of the most amazing people I have met in my life come from around the Warren Point area who have been working to defend this area and really defend it from when the town dock was meant to be filled in. Fionnuala already spoke about that. And I think 3 times now when there have been attempts to put toxic or hazardous waste into Warren Point. Here we go. This is, I'm not sure what the year is, Shea, but you might remember this one. Town Hall, Newry.
That was the dredging, Carlingford Lough. I'm not sure of the year.
And just tell us briefly what the dredging would entail.
Warren Point Harbour Authority came up with the plan to dredge Carlingford Lough, seabed materials. But they have a practice of taking, they've been doing it for years, which is bad, but they had a they used to take it 20 kilometres out off the coast and dump it 20 kilometres in the RC, but they come up with a brand new plan to take it, dredge seabed materials from the inner loch and dump the same seabed materials in Carlingford Lough, hoping that it would be taken out by the tide. But unfortunately, or fortunately enough, them plans were highlighted by the community. There's a good community, Carlingford Lough community came together, very much so, and them plans were altered. I think when it was all sold out, Warrenpoint Harbour Authority were going to save something like £5,000 from dredging seabed, dumping the seabed materials in Carlingford Lough. So, but lucky enough, them plans were changed.
Just to remind you of the beauty, we'll move up the loch a bit. Would you know where this is? Perfect place to be dumping material, I suppose. Yeah, that's Millbay. What a beautiful place. I just thought, I was just up there yesterday, I thought I'd put up a photograph to cheer us up at this stage, because there's so much to celebrate around here. That's why we're here as well. We're here to celebrate it and enjoy it and spread the word to people of all ages. Just, you can guess if this man or woman is going to fall for a bit of light relief. What do you think? Quick. Where are we going here from there? Sorry. This is some great festivals right around here in Newry, Warrenpoint, Rostrevor. Thousands of people come to attend these. This is the Wake the Giant Festival, I think a couple of years ago. A wonderful idea, and the name, that title name, came from Love Your Loch, the group who have done so much work here. People that I just love. I think they're amazing people. But they came up with that name, Wake the Giant, and I love it because there's a suggestion there of waking the giant of community spirit, waking the giant of the voice of the people to stand up, talk, defend, take action to protect all that's around them. Mark Gibbons on this day was, I think 50 people on that day came to him to complain about the smell. This is the height of the tourist season. Think about that. People come from all over the area, from other countries. We have a woman who comes to Fiddler's Green Festival from San Francisco. She's a pediatrician. She works with First Nations American people, Indians as some people would call them, who have lost spirit from the way they've been treated over the years. She teaches them to swim. She takes them out to that island, that famous prison island in San Francisco Bay. Do you remember the name of it? Alcatraz. She teaches these people to swim, to get their courage back. And for many years she has come over here and she has hopped into the water in Rostrevor, swam all the way to Omeath, took a breather, didn't get out of the water and swam back. She's done that for many years. She's an amazing swimmer and a wonderful woman. This year she came and she saw what was happening in Warrenpoint, and with great regret she said, I cannot swim this year. I'll just leave you with that thought. This isn't Wake the Giant Festival. This is people taken to the streets in the end of August last year about the smile. Again, like the people who came here in desperation for survival, they went onto the streets. There's the Love Your Loch poster again, great to see it. In the background, there are a couple of posters saying time to break the silence to £7,500 by silence or something like that. £7,500 or £8,000 a year is what you get to sit in Warrenpoint Harbour Authority's board. And there's a remarkable silence coming from all the councillors who sit on that board. And all the parties as well. Who knows why? Who knows why? One man there who's brave enough to speak, an independent, Mark Gibbons. There he is in the centre. He told us that day about all the different complaints he's had. He's a postman. He literally is on the doorstep. He's on the street. He knows what's going on. And here we go with how any harbour authority, any waste company could even live for a week, never mind a year, generating headlines like this. A meeting in Town Hall, Warrenpoint, quite a few there to tell their own story. If you stand in a wet street on an October night with 3 generations of people standing on the street because they know no other way to get rid of a smell, they've run out of politicians to ask, you never can unsee that. That's a mother explaining to her son what's going on. It's not an accident. There is a master plan in Warrenpoint Port. It's not an accident. It's not just a plan. It's not just a theory. It's a master plan. You should read it. Just for anyone who hasn't seen it, this is how ITV News, it's going to take 2 minutes, this reported the story. Sorry, I think I've actually gone past that. Let me see. This should work.
Pearl Brown's home is filled with love and dozens of dead flies.
They've been replaced this morning. I have that big thing that was emptied a few days ago.
The pensioner lives just a few hundred yards away from Warrenpoint Port, where a pile-up of waste has been sitting for longer than usual. The result, an influx of flies and a so-called stomach-churning smell smothering the town.
Toxic. It's just... I can't even... It's really, it's just... I've turned the phrase of an evil smell.
She cares for 7 disabled children, the youngest 18, the oldest in his 40s, all with varying needs, including one with breathing difficulties. The smell and the influx of flies is piling on the pressure.
You end up obviously shutting the window, but then the smell has got in. You have to sort of cover your nose. That's not normal living.
A short distance away, it's far from business as usual at this cafe. A fly guard fitted to the front door to fend off unwanted winged visitors.
We're in business here 15 years. 2008 we opened, and I can safely say that it's never been as bad in the last maybe 2 months. All of a sudden we're noticing a lot of flies. But it's kind of embarrassing when you're serving food and customers. If I see it, the owner, customers see it, and it doesn't look good.
What is the smell in Warrenpoint? Where's it coming from?
A rally was recently held to raise awareness about the stench, a smell that appears to have affected most of the town. UTV understands that one Warrenpoint councillor has received more than 400 complaints about the smell coming from the port in the space of just 1 week.
We just want answers, and a civil conversation is all we want. We just want answers on this resolved, and for everybody to resolve together.
After weeks of dealing with flies and foul smells, Pearl hopes she can once again enjoy her garden without interruption. Stuart Robson, UTV Live, Warrenpoint.
Pearl hopes, and everyone hopes, the smell's still there, as bad as ever. Again, headlines tell their own story. And here we see that Regen are in breach of licence laws. That's an important one to note. This is a place where we're lucky enough to live, and we'll leave it at that with the hope that we can join forces across the lough to change things, to get, mature discussion rather than silly lying and trying to escape the truth. This would be a wonderful thing, and here's a thought to leave you with. If we wait for governments, it will be too late. If we act as individuals, it will be too little. But if we act as communities, it might just be enough. And it might just be in time. So I'm just going to open the floor or pass the mic on for anyone who'd like to ask or say anything. You're very welcome.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, Fionnuala, sure.
We've heard a lot about Regen, and it's not just about Regen. The latest DAERA report on the quality of water in the lough said that the water in Carlingford Lough is just satisfactory, which is just above poor. Now, Northern Ireland Water have said that in times of very heavy rain, raw sewage is going into the lough, and at those times the water will not be satisfactory. And the impact on swimmers of swimming in water that isn't satisfactory, that is poor quality, exposes them to infections, ear infections, mouth infections, throat infections, things like hepatitis and E. coli. So it's not just about the harbour, it's also about what else is going into the lough and how can we protect people using the lough. That's what I wanted to say. Okay.
So anyway, I'll be the roving microphone stand. Conor, would you like to say something? I know you work on water and that kind of thing. That'll be your field. And we have a marine biologist here as well. You might like to say something, Grace.
Not really prepared to say anything, Colin, but thank you. Just in terms of the water quality, Fionnuala, the odds are certainly stacked against us. Newry, the whole sewerage system in Newry is a combined system, so that every time there's heavy rain, the sewage works gets completely overwhelmed, and there isn't enough retention time within the tanks, so the sewage has to be discharged to the loch without full treatment. There are a number of large factories that I will not name because I don't want to be sued within an inch of my life, but that possibly could make pharmaceuticals, that have occasionally had spills which knock out all the bugs in the sewage works and render it useless for up to a couple of weeks at a time. Thankfully that happens less than it used to. And for me personally, for the last couple of decades, I have had great concerns over the relocation of the Northern Ireland mussel dredging fleet to Carlingford Lough, where for I think it's 8 to 9 months of the year they trawl up and down, scraping their heavy metal bars along the bed of the loch and destroying everything in their path. This also dredges up the mud, which releases nutrients into the water, which again impact on water quality and on water clarity, and create the algal blooms which look like sewage slicks in calm weather that accumulate in the shore with the least onshore breeze. So, sure.
You sent me photographs of these slicks. So I thought they were some chemical.
They're algal blooms, and they're very visible during the calm weather. You don't notice them in the choppy weather.
Do you see them around the sea wall?
Yeah.
As you're going out by Sandy Bottom and that?
That's right. And then when there's more people out and more people want to swim, it's in bright sunny weather, and of course the sunlight just multiplies all that effect as well.
What's the danger of that?
There's no danger, it just looks rotten, but it's a symptom. Like so many other things, it's a symptom of nutrient problems within the loch. And that's not to mention the intensive farming activities that occur along the banks of every single river that feed into the loch for hundreds of square miles. Sure.
Thank you very much for that. Where I live in Omeath, we have taken quite a few videos of stuff appearing along the loch, along the shore. And that's one big thing for us is who's responsible for water quality checks in the loch? Who do you report it to when you see something? I know we have the Lochs Agency and we also have Northern Ireland Water, but who is ultimately responsible for that? And if we're noticing it and we are seeing that the quality is bad and they're saying the quality of the water is just satisfactory, in such a huge free-flowing loch of water, why is that the case? And why are we accepting this? Why are we not standing up and doing something about this? We should be utilising our loch more for pleasure and not for industry. We should be swimming in Omeath and Warrenpoint. We should be enjoying the loch an awful lot more than what we are, but we're afraid to because of the water quality. So that's something that hugely needs to be addressed around the whole loch. I know Omeath has recently got a new sewage treatment plant, and it was unforgivable for years that what was happening there. But it's just as bad in the Nara water area too, what's happening. I've reported stuff to the Lochs Agency and they're very good at coming out and having a look at it. And they're asking me, where's it coming from? And I can actually see it coming down the stream from Nara water. I can see the whole line of it coming directly from Nara water, but we never know where that reporting goes to, where that reporting ends, or what's been done about it. So I think for me it's time to stand up and have a bigger voice about the quality of our water in Carlingford Lough. Anybody else want to say something?
The representative from the harbour, would you like to speak, or are you here in a listening role only? You're very welcome to speak if you'd like to.
No, I'm in here just listening.
Okay.
To observe was the points to be considered.
Okay. Would you like to comment on the fact that the waste allowance was doubled during a period of non-compliance last September?
No, I'm not commenting regarding any regions' waste.
Look,
they have to comment on their own terms.
I respect you for coming along. Public meetings, it's the job of the chairman. It's laid down as his job to be at public meetings. He hasn't attended one, so it's no harm probably in noting that. Grace, or anyone else at all that wants to add? I mean, as we go, are we getting the impression that we really should be getting a body together like this to do something, working across the border? I think that's why we're here. So, but yes, Mrs. Grace, a marine biologist and teacher.
Thanks, Colm. I'm, I suppose, first and foremost a resident in Restrever, but I do have the background of a marine biology degree, and I taught in Newry for almost 30 years. So we did a lot of ecology work in Cologne and Restrever, and I have, seen a lot of what we would call eutrophication. That would be chemicals, nitrates going into the water, and the council come along when they're asked and clean that eutrophication. That's that heavy green algae that grows. So again, that's a symptom of bad management of the loch. But then the loch, as far as I know, you see, there's not a full emptying of the loch. There's only a partial tide there by nature. So that in itself, the water doesn't go in and out. It's not like the Atlantic Ocean or that. So where you have nutrients building up there, you're going to get problems, Also, the Northern Ireland water, I was there, just happened to be in one point, and I saw these three, I went down and I spoke to them. There were 3 biologists, and they had a beautiful jeep and a lovely trailer and boat. And I got talking to them, and they were going out into the water, out into the loch to take water samples. So I was really interested about this. So they seemingly come every month, and they take water samples. But again, just like you said, I don't know where these results go, and you get this vague, good, satisfactory, what does that all mean, But, as I walk along the shore, you can see things, when you have an eye, you can see the change in the flora and fauna along the beach. And what I would suggest is that, proper testing, that we do testing of our own as independently as we can and keep our own records, whatever and however that is done, Yeah, that's all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Anyone else at all? Yes, gentleman here.
Hello, I'm John Bagwell, and I've been living in Warren Point for 8 years now. And for the first 3 of them, I used to do the wetland bird count from Warren Point to Rostrevor. So this is all the birds like you can see, like the black guillemots there. And during the year when we had COVID, they had 10 chicks. Now there are only 4 left. What's happened to the quality of water? I went down along Drumsesk Road there. Normally you'd see 700 oyster catchers. There are none. Access into Ross's Quay in order to look at the foreshore, there are no birds there. What has happened to the water? I've been up at Mill Loch up by Burn. I couldn't go swimming up in Camla this last year because of the algae bloom. And this is shocking by any standards. And there are things that can be done because there's a treatment of China clay that they use in the Serpentine in London when they have an algal bloom that actually prevents the sun's rays from feeding the algae. And you can treat it. It's quite expensive to do it, but it would be worthwhile in these sensitive places to do. So I think that we're being very badly affected by the quality of water, even access. In various places along the Drumcesc Road there, I can't even see where you used to see all of the oyster catchers and ring plover. There are none of them anymore. They're just not coming. And I'd ask the question, why?
Thank you, John. Thanks very much, John. Interested to hear your work in accounting, did you say? We may be looking for a treasurer tonight.
I don't do things like that.
Okay.
Brendan O'Neill, Warren Point resident. Just the lady from Omeath there was inquiring about who are these companies that test the water. There is a company in Dundalk in the industrial estate called Eurofins. Yeah, well, I seen the van down in Warren Point Beach recently, and also in Omeath recently as well. So if you wanted to contact there regarding water quality, the reports and what have you, it might be worth following up.
Linda Sullivan here, who has worked with Indigenous groups in Central South America. You may not want to comment specifically on what's going on here, but it would be very good if you did. But do you recognise a pattern there from your own travels that you might like to mention?
Thanks, Colm. Yeah, so I suppose the main pattern that I see is communities are always the ones that recognise the importance of water, that water is life, and that was when I'm part of the environmental gathering as well, and which is a gathering of community organisations across the island that are resisting various different kinds of contaminating and destructive developments. And we had a gathering in Rostrevor a couple of years ago with the theme Water is Life, and unfortunately, we still have to keep on standing up for the water and standing up for the health of our communities. I'm also involved in the campaign against mining in the Sperrin Mountains, and an expert who was supporting the communities there said that he'd never seen an agency as incompetent in his life as the Northern Ireland Environmental Protection or Northern Ireland Environmental Agency. Like DERA has failed time and time again to protect the communities and protect our environment and protect our water. So it is the communities that are the real protectors that have to step into that role of environmental protection. We do it voluntarily. DERA is getting paid and they're not doing their job. So unfortunately, we're the ones that have to do it. I was in Dakota last month, and we met with a lot of Indigenous people from Lakota and Ojibwe nations. And they engage in water walks, so they walk from the source of a river to the sea, and that's a sacred practice for them to pray for the water and honour the water and recognise that water is an essential element to supporting life. But also that's coupled with standing up and saying no to destructive projects, such as the Standing Rock oil pipeline, such as industrial agriculture, which is also devastating communities there too, as we see here, such as what's happening around Lough Neagh too. So yeah, and we see the blue-green algae that's destroying Lough Neagh as well. And one of the main culprits is also industrial agriculture. So yeah, I think joining together, as Shay said at the start, the water is what connects us, not divides us. So I think we have to remember that and stand up for the water. So yeah, I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you, Linda. Anyone else? Just mentioning there Linda works with a group who are interested, and many of us are, in giving legal rights to nature, legal rights to a river, to a mountain, to a forest. It has as much right to flourish as a human being, because we're all part of that system, just as we're about 60-70% water. And we don't last all that long without air either. And if you think of the great tree systems of the world, and the ancient woodlands of this island, which are right down now to I think about 2%. Probably one of the lowest in Europe, I think it may be. But we're going to, welcome any. Paul, would you like to say anything? Paul Clarkin here has done amazing work drawing attention to the importance of trees over the years. Paul Clarkin, an author.
Well, we've all seen the boats dragging those nets in the loch and destroying the seabed. We've all seen the slicks coming out of the Mound Road when it's over capacity into the loch as well. But there's also damage been done on land. Like in the Kilbrunny Park, we've lost our Glen Stream and the Glen Stream Trail. It was washed away September 23. No one bothered their ass to repair it. And now the salmon sitting in the ferry lane can't get up the stream to spawn. We've seen them in the waiting pools recently. I mean, this will be very simply done, but why it's been left, no one understands. But that's really all I can say about it. The trees themselves in the park need an awful lot of work too, but it's been left. Half the arboretum is completely overgrown with invasive species. I've been asking now 10 years to get it cleared. There's about 65 species there, and only about 20 of them are visible. So,
well, if one person cares as much as you, that's an important beginning. Thank you, Paul. If we act as communities, it might just be enough, and it might just be in time. That's what this is all about here tonight. It's joining up the forces across both sides of the loch and way beyond that. Delighted to see so many of you coming out on such a wild, dark sort of a night you'd probably be happier to stay at home. Yes?
My name is Johnny McElheron, and living in Warren Point for 30 plus years. And you just raised a point there about bringing the communities together. And one of the things that I observe is that this affects all of us, the communities right around the loch, on the shores, back from the seafront to where people have their residences and the housing estates, and I cannot understand why something that affects so many of us attracts such a small audience. And it's the same, like it is, everyone here, it's fantastic to see that there's 20, 25, 30 people here in this room tonight. I think it's fantastic. But there are, in Warren Point, there are a lot of influential people. There are people in commerce and who have got access to, the kind of resources that this kind of project needs. And they're all strangely silent. I cannot get my head around that, because they're living there, they're having to close their windows to keep the flies out during summer, autumn, winter. We now get flies in the winter time, which is bizarre. And I have thought about this, and I've wondered, why is this campaign not reaching a wider audience, and why is there not more feet on the ground, if you like, from these influential people who have the ear of the politicians, who the politicians listen to? Not somebody. I think sometimes part of the issue is that when people protest, there's a lack of credibility seen, because they don't have the weight of some of these influential figures. I'm thinking of a few individuals, but I'm not going to name anybody. I think it's up to them to recognise that this affects them and their children as much as it affects you or I. And I have to say, as someone, I've been following RARE for years, love our loch. I think what you people have done, of all the things we have that's great about Warren Point and Carlingford Lough, you guys are among that. You really are a great asset and a force for good. And without you, there would be no accountability whatsoever. And I think the word has to be got out, and figure out a way of connecting with people who are possible, who can access the ears of people in power, who can make changes. And I think it's kind of marketing and getting the word out there, and getting some influential figures on board, and to raise our voice louder. So, very good.
Thank you. That's the question that fascinates everyone. Why are politicians so quiet? There is a theory that the more funding you get from any body, a corporate body, the less likely you are to speak out against them. And it's not no sin to fund a party. It's no sin to turn up at the Sinn Féin Ardèche, for example. That all happens, But should the money you get from whoever is funding your campaigns make the funder more important than the people who elect you? I think that's the point we have to make to politicians. Paul, did you want to add something to that? Yeah.
The government to give permission for those new sheds built in the docks without planning.
Sure.
For those new sheds built without planning, I mean, it merely must be down to rates and profits that the government can collect. Whereas it totally destroys the area. The new bridge coming across for tourism to come into the area, and what are they going to look at? These dumps of plastic and huge big industrial sheds. It just completely destroys the whole beauty of the loch and the villages in the area.
Yes, that's a very good point, Paul, and one that we're well across. If any of you ever tried to put an extension onto a house or make a bigger window and had to jump through the hoop to get planning permission, you might be very surprised to know that those buildings going up right at the roundabout don't have planning permission.
What reason?
They have permitted development, which is supplied to DEFRA by a document which was written up by DERA. And it's nonsense.
What do you do with the lake, really?
Well, they shouldn't be able to, but they do, and we're pulling them up on that. We've put on a lot of pressure over the years on government offices, and a couple of years ago, was it 2023, the Northern Ireland Audit Office brought out a document called Risks of Fraud in Planning, with a lot of red lights, red flags for what that would look like. I have a copy of it here tonight if you want to have a look. So we pointed out that DERA report supporting permitted development for those in ugly sheds right there, it's full of signs of it. So we're letting them know, see what they'll say about it.
The rates on industrial building can be up to 40,000, 60,000 pounds a year, and that's what the government's collecting. So they probably let it go. An ordinary domestic house rates are capped at 4,100. The biggest house possible.
Yeah, well, it's also, Paul, the idea that they put them right at the end of the
shoreline, nearly.
Right at the shoreline, and it means that is now going to be regarded as industrial land because they've set that precedent, and that's what they're up there. Why would they be bringing food up there for inspection through a site which has permission to handle 1.1 million tonnes of waste a year, black bin waste that hasn't been processed? And, there are plenty of reports, you've heard them yourselves, about rodents that were mistaken for dogs. They're so big, but that's another story. Anyone else? Yeah, John, and then we'll probably move towards getting a committee.
Paul, I just wanted to say that I actually reviewed the constitution of the port, I think way back in 2017 or 18, and actually they don't have to get planning permission. That's the problem. It's the constitution of the port. Therefore, if you want to change that, you have to actually go to the government and ask them to change the law about the way in which ports are governed.
Well, the minute the government can promote tourism in the area, and this is surely completely shoot themselves in the foot.
I agree with you, but I mean that's where the problem is, that they're allowed to do it. They don't have to go to the council to do it.
Actually, they do.
They
go through planning permission.
The way I read it, that they didn't have to.
Well,
it's actually under they don't have to do it. So therefore, there is something within the constitution of the port that allows them to do this. They can override the council. They can do what they like.
That's true, but they do go. They do ask for planning permission.
That's the reason why. That would only be a courtesy, probably.
That would be a good word for it. Yeah. Anyone else want to say anything? Yes. Yes.
I live on the mount of this smelling thing. I'm just
please tell us about it.
Yeah, you live where? I just live just not too far from Pearl that was on, and at the moment I have a pest control coming out tomorrow. There's rats in our garden that I have never had in 40 years that I've lived in Claremont Gardens. This is outrageous. And I don't open my windows. I've just recently become a first-time grandmother. I can't even take my grandson down because of the invasion of all this that's going around the environment. The smell is horrendous. My washing has to be out at a certain time and back in because it's clinging onto my clothes as well. This isn't normal living. And I've lived in Warrenpoint all my life. And this is terrible. And it's disgusting that we don't have the people's support and our councillors here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very, very distressing to hear these stories. There was a report, and please feel free to comment at any time if you wish, an independent report, so-called, made by Warrenpoint Harbour Authority last year. I think they spent about £20,000 on it, and that is slowly but surely being picked apart right now. It's just unbelievable stuff that's in there. It's full of lies. It's quite safe to say that word. I have no problem saying that word. There is one exceptional politician who, a bit like Patrick Brown, when Patrick was with the Lions, who wasn't afraid to put his head above the parapet. I can imagine if any party is being funded by a body that's being challenged, they take a certain amount of, pressure from the funder. But at the moment, Colin McGrath from SDLP is doing amazing work on that. He will be questioning Andrew Muir, who is the Dara Minister, on Thursday, and whether Regen, Warrenpoint Harbour Authority or Northern Ireland Environment Agency, like it or not, that report will be picked apart in a spectacular fashion. And I suppose for councillors on the board of Warrenpoint Harbour Authority, they may wait or they may go down with the boat. But that will be coming up in the news pretty soon, I'd say.
One of our main reasons here tonight is to form a steering group. And the steering group will come together, and we want it really to be as many people that have an interest in this as possible, to decide our aims and objectives, to decide to work on our constitution, and to bring the constitution and our aims back to a bigger group in say, after maybe February, January?
Yeah, it could be January.
January. But we need people to join us. We particularly need people with an experience and knowledge in environmental issues. I see that we have Dean McCullough here who might help us. We need people with experience in accountancy, because we don't have anybody with experience in accountancy. We need people with scientific backgrounds that might have an interest in water testing, which is obviously very important to us. So if there's anybody here that would like to join our steering group, if you could maybe put your hand up and let us see how many people we have for our steering group. So we've got Dean. And maybe if I ask people to say their names, so we have Dean and Connor, and I've got Eileen and Grace and Washington McGuinness. Okay. Who's down there behind? Lauren Martin. Okay. Anybody else? Paul Clarkin. Brian Cleveland. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah. I'm sorry, could you say your name? Teresa. Teresa Martin. Oh, Teresa Martin, okay.
If everybody that's put their hands up tonight, if you've all signed the register and left your email addresses
and phone number
and telephone number, we're just going to get everything together that we've done here tonight and then email it out to everybody. Sorry, your name is?
Morris. Okay. So we would plan to meet when? No, we want to have it finished by January. So before Christmas for our first meeting? Yeah. We plan to meet before Christmas and come back to a bigger group at the end of January with our constitution sorted and our aims and objectives sorted. Yeah. Mr. Bradley's keeping us right. Lawrence Bradley here. He works with the Confederation of Community Groups, and he's been really helpful to us and keeping us on track.
I'm also involved in the community thing here for 20 years, but I also had an experience of cold water swimming in Camla River a long time ago. And it was interesting that thing, point that lady made about, Ashley, can you hear me okay? The lady made about, you know, the walk from the source to the, because to some degree, it's not just the problems of Warren Point, you know, it's the problems of Camla and the problems of Slievecullion and all the rest, because I live quite close to the Camla River where it comes through Bestbrook, or it's then called the Bestbrook River. But, you know, it's interesting that water ends up with use, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it might be missing a bit of a trick if you don't maybe, and I know that you want to keep the thing focused on the loch, but the loch depends on Camla Lake, doesn't it? You know, and it was very, very disappointing there this year to see the place closed down, Camla Lake, and that algae stuff all around the lake. So maybe there's a bit of a message there around, you know, widening your net a wee bit, you know, wider than that.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Lawrence. I think on a broader, we are going to try to tap into the rivers and the waterways that run into Carlingford Lough, and that is part of the plan. Myself and John had a conversation the other night. I think we were talking about Camla Lake as well, and what way we can bring it in, because it is water everywhere, and the riverways.
And there's a very active group around Camla Lake, you know, that you could be connecting with.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons why we decided to have the meeting in Newry tonight, because we consider Carlingford Lough from the lighthouse right up to the river. You know, it's not just an area in Moran Point, it's not just an area in Omeath or Carlingford, it's the whole of the loch. So maybe branching it out into the subsidiaries to that, would be
and it comes back to Colum's song about Morrigan Newry, you know, because Newry was that conurbation for all of those people, you know.
Yeah, that's what we hope to do is as I say, widen the whole community out. We also want to look into different things like bird watch surveys, coast watch surveys, nature watch, and a variety of different projects, seal rescue teams, maybe even a wildlife rescue team for the loch, different people to do bird counting and many other marine and wildlife concerns going on. So we hope to broaden out. But I think that's it, isn't it?
Yeah. Three couples altogether from the meeting tonight, it seems. Regen, the mussel people, and the sewage plants. You want to see whenever they've done the mussel have done the dredging, you want to be behind one of the boats. The disturbance they create is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I was only there was the last Sunday morning at Narrow I do a bit of rowing, by the way, and just come behind it. It's no the whole thing. It was polluted water, but the colour you couldn't see it.
Yeah.
But then I'd take the boat home anyway, and I'd do washes. Last Sunday there was a skin and it was unreal.
Yeah.
Imagine walking, swimming in that. I'm in the inside of it. So.
Yeah, and we are aware that mussel dredging was banned in Strangford Lough, you know, and all of a sudden it opened up in Carlingford Lough. I think it was started off with one or two small families, and then it broadened out into something like 18 boats. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't think you really need a licence to do the mussel dredging. You can just apply.
The licence is granted by the board.
There you go. And in whose interest would it be to have the loch destroyed?
But just on that as well, you know, there's a beautiful walk from, we call the forest on the Omeath side of Narrowwater Wood as well. And there's a beautiful walk from that wood up to the two towers. And I believe that, you know, the horses used to be there and they'd have the boats along in shallow water. But that's mostly where those dredging boats would dredge. And if you walk that in low tide, it's absolutely decimated the whole seabed up along there. And you think, what are they dredging anymore? There was one or two up this week, and you look down, what? There's nothing there. There's absolutely nothing there anymore. Like, we used to pick winkles on the shore. There's 5 of us at home, and if you wanted money at the weekend, you would put a bucket and a pair of boots, and you would out to pick winkles. And Used to be tons of rocks and
Yeah.
tons of winkles. There's none. You don't
Yeah.
see that anymore. So it's decimating the seabed.
Regarding the mussels, do they replant them? What happens then?
No, they're not replanting them as far as not there anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And get them out down because we're recording.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shay.
Opposition to the mussel dredging industry within the loch doesn't have to mean no mussel industry within the loch. In so many other places around Ireland, the UK, Europe, all around the world, there are thriving seafood industries, particularly mussel growing, and they grow them on ropes. And it's entirely sustainable. Because mussels are filter feeders, they actively go to cleaning up the water, and the ropes that the mussels grow on and the mussels themselves act as a foundation for so many other species to thrive within the loch. I have personally raised this on numerous occasions with Lochs Agency before, who are meant to, and this is in a big inverted commas, police the shell fishing industry within the loch, being a cross-border quango. And they have no interest in ceasing the destructive practice of mussel dredging. They have no interest in the alternatives of rope culture that works so well and so effectively all around the world. All it takes is a small change of attitude and a small change of equipment at the back of the boats, and that it could be a problem that's in history within a couple of years. But there doesn't seem to be any political will or oversight will on the part of the Lochs Agency or anybody else.
Hello, Maurice McConville. I've lived in Restorafor from 1996. I have noticed the decline of the bird life. I like watching the birds, and I've noticed that they've declined drastically in that time. Listening to all the things, it's great to see that there are people here who are willing to stand up for nature, and there are a number of issues that need to be addressed. I see as though, as well as being reactive, we're reacting to stuff that's happening. I think also it might be an idea to look at what would it look like ideally if we got everything we wanted. What would that look like? And look at how feasible that is, and develop a plan around your issues rather than a knee-jerk reaction to them. I'm not saying that you don't take on these issues, but rather than always, I'm thinking of more positive sort of image. We're here to actually enhance, enrich, develop in a sustainable way the loch.
Yeah, I think it's important to know we are for something. We're here because we're for something.
Okay. Right. So really just my function here tonight is really to facilitate the committee and getting going. So just really a couple of steps. So we've got the first step here tonight in terms of the public meeting. What we need then is a follow-up meeting with the steering committee to peruse the constitution, get it up and going, get a bank account sorted, and look at charity registration, if that's going to be the way to go with this. So really the Confederation are more than happy to help you along that road, and it really shouldn't take more than a couple of months to get the whole thing going in terms of the mechanics of that. Then really it's up to you then to develop a plan and look at how you're going to bring those issues forward. I liked Maurice's point there around a more positive vision for the group, and not just about focusing on current issues, although I do, and you're right, you need to take them on. The man who said the thing about taking on the identifiable problem makers, I think that is a fair point. You need to have an action plan against that, but you do need to have a more positive vision around, what the loch would be for in people's lives ideally, and promote that. So look, we're up for helping you, free of charge and very willing.
That's great.
Sorry for now. Come on, let's go.
Well, that's it, everybody. It's been great to have a turnout, and it's great to have a steering group set up, and we'll be in touch with the meeting, hopefully before Christmas, and then hopefully launch it with our constitution after Christmas. Is that okay? Any other questions before we go?
Just to say as well, if anybody just wants to be on the committee, just, they have nothing specific to put into it, but they just want to be on the committee.
That's okay.
Very, very welcome
Yeah.
to be on the committee as well. Anybody, we do want people with a range of ideas to be on board, so don't feel that you have to come with something specific. Just to be on the committee would be enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right.